Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Miller.
And my name is Hazel Miller.
And we are the co-publishers at Book Hug Press.
It is our great pleasure today to welcome Karen Fastrup to read from and discuss her latest novel, Hunger Heart, translated from the Danish by Marina Allemano and just released by us at Book Hug Press in November of 2022.
It's our great pleasure to be working with Karen Fastrup once again at Book Hug Press. In 2008, we published her first book that was released in English, Beloved of My 27 Senses, translated by Tara F. Chase. Thanks to a publishing fellowship in 2019, we reconnected with Karen and learned all about her new book, Hunger Heart.
A little bit about Hunger Heart before we bring Karen out. Hunger Heart is a sensual, profound work of autofiction about love, relationships, mental health, and recovery by one of Denmark's most celebrated literary writers. In Hunger Heart, Fastrup immerses us in the alienations of her own breakdown and hospitalization. We learn what it's like to apologize for threatening a loved one with a knife, how an eating disorder can begin with the discomfort of family and adolescence, and how to make the long and difficult journey back to one's creative life. But this book is not primarily a book of heartache and damage. In Hunger Heart, we are reminded of the electricity of love and the power of language to support our identities and our lives. Deeply courageous, captivating, and affecting, Hunger Heart is as much a balm as it is a firework.
Karen Fastrup is the author of 6 novels. Hunger Heart was first published in Denmark in 2018 and was shortlisted for the Danish Radio's Novel Prize in 2019. The Danish Arts Foundation called the book a work of particularly high artistic quality. Femina magazine named Fastrup one of the 7 most remarkable women in Denmark in 2019, and the year's taboo breaker for the awareness Hunger Heart created around mental illness. In addition to her own writing, Fastrup has translated more than 50 novels into Danish by such notable authors as Sally Rooney, Karl Ove Nosgaard, August Strindberg, Linn Ullmann, Vigdis Hjorth, and Per Pedersen. Her novel, Beloved of My 27 Senses, translated by Tara Chase, was published by Book Hug Press in 2008. Karen lives in Copenhagen, where she is joining us today. Please welcome Karen, who's going to begin with a short reading from the book, both in Danish and in English. Please welcome Karen Fastrup.
First of all, I'm going to read a small passage of the Danish edition of the book Hunger Heart, and then I will read the same passage in English. Frederiksberg, januar 2017. Det blæser. Jeg kan se det i den store birk uden for mit vindue, og jeg kan høre det. Vinden tager i ruderne og sprosserne, den væser ind gennem sprækkerne. Jeg kan lide lyden, som af store træer, der roterer som piskeris over mit hoved. Jeg lægger panden mod det kolde glas og bliver klar over, at jeg ikke har angst. Jeg retter mig op, træder et skridt tilbage. Jeg er alene. Der er ingen distraktioner, og der er ingen angst. Der er rolige, dagklare tanker. Min angsthud er væk. Angsthud er tyk, tung, svær at bevæge sig under, og samtidig flagrende let. Den fører en omkring, har sine egne veje, som regel gennem kolde, tågetætte landskaber, hovedkuls efter en kæreste. Hælene rører ikke underlaget. Vriste trækkes over gulv og gader, vejer ingenting, kan slæbes omkring. Der er hungerhuller til øjnene i huden. Gennem de huller går alting ind og ud. Der er en voldsom udveksling der. Et højt tempo. det alt for tunge, og det alt for lette i en manifestation. Well, I guess many of you didn't understand anything, so please hear the same page in English. Frederiksberg neighborhood in Copenhagen, January 2017. It's windy. I can tell from the large birch tree below my window, and I can hear it. The wind is rattling the window panes and mounting bars. It's hissing through the cracks. I like the sound, as if big trees were spinning like whisk above my head. I touch the cool glass with my forehead and realize I'm not anxious. I straighten up, take one step back. I'm alone. There are no distractions, and there is no anxiety. In my head are calm, clear thoughts. I walk around the apartment, shake my hands, my arms, stop and check again. It's not coming. My anxiety skin is gone. Anxiety skin is thick, heavy, difficult to move under, and at the same time light and fluttery. It leads you around, has its own pathways, usually through cold, foggy landscapes. Rushing headlong after a boyfriend, heels not touching the ground, insteps dragged across floors and streets, weighs nothing, can be lugged around. There are hunger holes in the skin instead of eyes. Everything passes through the holes. The exchange is fierce, going at a furious pace. The much too heavy and the much too airy sensations form a unity. Anxiety has been my basic emotional state for 7 months. There is nothing I fear more than anxiety. Anxiety is a constant sound of gnashing rat teeth, the beast in my belly. Next morning, I wake up, open my eyes, lie still, and look around in the room. Is it here? It isn't. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Wow, Karen, that was just so beautiful. And what a delight to hear that same passage in first Danish, followed by the translation from Marina. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
It's now our great pleasure to introduce our own Rachel Gary, I'm so sorry, Rachel, is going to lead Karen in conversation. Rachel Gary is the publishing assistant here at Book Hug Press. In addition, however, to her work at the press, she writes essays which have been included in publications such as the Literary Review of Canada, POV Magazine, and Prism International. Rachel is a passionate reader of literature and translation, and we're just so thrilled that she's going to host this conversation now with Karen. Over to you, Rachel.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. I loved Hunger Heart so much, and I have a whole bunch of questions to ask. And the first one is, Hunger Heart is your most personal novel to date. I'm wondering, did the writing process for Hunger Heart differ significantly from writing your other novels? And did anything about it surprise you?
Well, actually, the writing of Hunger Heart started with a severe writing crisis, which I think was a part of what made me sick at that time of my life. But once I was admitted in this psychiatric ward, I said to myself, Karen, if you are ever going to be able to write again, then what you are like experiencing inside of yourself and outside of yourself will be just great stuff to put inside into a novel. So so it started there, and then the crisis, the writing crisis, it kept going on. So actually, I made this agreement with my sister that I should send her some text every Thursday morning, just one line or one page or whatever I had, and that got me started.
That's really wonderful, and it's something you also write about in the book. So it's interesting to hear that part is sort of taken from life, which leads into my next question. This is a novel. However, it is, you know, based on an experience you had, and I'm wondering if writing a fictionalized account of your story changed the way you felt about it.
Yeah, I think like in hindsight, it's like it gave me the capacity of getting ownership of this period of my life back in 2015 and 16, when I suffered from this mental breakdown. And you know, sometimes it can be connected with feelings of shame, loss of control, to suffer from a mental breakdown. So it's also the writing, the process of writing, and the actual thing that it ended up being a novel gave me some feeling of strength and control back.
Right. Yeah. I'm wondering as well, so Hunger Heart is composed of short chapters. It alternates between different times in the narrator's life. We hear about childhood, hospitalization, as well as recovery. Why did you choose this fragmented structure over chronological storytelling?
I think I wanted to kind of emphasize this frenetic feeling you can have when you're sick, like I was at that time, and I kind of did that also, like in the each sentences, but also like in the composing of the novel. Like it's not, I didn't want like an easygoing long story, you know, like the author is taking the reader in hand and following her through. I wanted this, we're jumping from here to there, it goes fast, and also I would like to, I wanted to like put some a scene or two scenes from childhood that might kind of, in a way, reflect something in the former chapter concerning the now, the 2015, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Did you discuss with friends and family their fictionalized role in the book? Were they open to the process? And if so, what kind of conversations arose?
Yeah, I did. And I made this rule that the people I mentioned by their real name in the book should be allowed to read everything I wrote before publishing the book, of course. So they could have a final no or a final go, it's okay, or and I was like, yes, of course they should be able to decide this. But those people whom I, for different reasons, couldn't ask to read the book, for instance, they were dead, or I didn't have any relation with them anymore, there I changed their names. The boyfriend in the book, for instance.
Yeah, fair enough. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we heard in the beautiful reading you just gave, eyes are often referred to as hunger holes throughout the book. And I'd love to hear you speak a little bit more about this metaphor, and kind of let us know, like, what is vision hungry for?
Yeah, I think this metaphor originated from a feeling, a very like a physical feeling I had when I had this severe anxiety. I kind of got the feeling that I was drawn back into my head, away from my forehead, and that there was a distance inside me from in there and to the eyes. It sounds weird, but and then but it started there, and then I think I would also like to emphasize that when you suffer from severe anxiety, you can have like the feeling of being in a very cold, foggy landscape, like I read before, and standing there, and you are just freezing, and your eyes are very big, actually, like a little scared child, you could say, and then you're just you're kind of numb in a way, but you're just watching. But I also think in the metaphor, when it comes back in the novel throughout the pages, it kind of shows that you need so very much, when you have anxiety, you need so very much to connect to people, because there is a loneliness often, I think, in anxiety. So eyes, hunger holes, hungry eyes, they are actually they're hungry for belonging. They are hungry for feeling that you belong to other people, this community, the world outside you, that you are not just a small little island of your own. But I also think there is a good hunger in Hunger Heart and in the Hungry Eyes. There is this the woman, the Karen in the novel. She's hungry for feeling love, for loving people, but she's also hungry for interacting with the world, like perceiving landscapes, smells, touching, seeing. So there is, yeah, you could say a kind of sensuality in a way.
Thank you so much for that answer. That was wonderful. And as the metaphor comes out throughout the book, you really do feel all those different aspects. Yeah, thank you. So next, I want to turn a little bit to some of the other characters in the book. The characters for the parents in the novel are complicated, and they're portrayed with tender yet brutal honesty. The father is both caring and harsh, inspiring and demeaning. The mother clearly loves her children dearly, but also needs affirmation from them that she's a good mother. Was it difficult to portray these characters?
Yeah, it was very difficult, actually. I think it was the most difficult part of the writing process. Also, my mother, my own mother and father were dead when I wrote Hunger Heart. But I kind of had I felt some ethic dilemmas in you could say, like, because I don't want to like place any guilt on any human being, and that goes for my parents as well. They did the very best they could, and I think all parents do that, but it can be very difficult to be a parent. I'm a mother myself, I know. You can do so many mistakes, and things happen to you while you're bringing up your children, things that they will, you could say, even get traumatized from. I think we all get kind of traumatized during growing up. But I also, but I think I'm happy you mentioned the word like tenderness, or I'm not quite sure you said that, but let me bring that in. Yeah, thank you. Because I really wanted to write or create these the mother and the father as complex characters, and I also wanted to show my great love for them and respect, besides all the complexities we had, which a lot of them arose from the thing that the firstborn child in my family, my big brother, died when he was 8 years old. So yeah.
Well, it really comes through in the text, and it's interesting because, you know, the chapters are fairly brief, but you get this very complex, fleshed out portrait of that relationship, and I think it's one of the most fantastic things about the book. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the idea of diagnosis. Getting a specific diagnosis, like a label, is a little bit like a story, a narrative one tells about oneself. So how did the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder affect the way that you wrote the main character?
Yeah, I tried to in Hunger Heart to show that the main character, Karen, she's struggling with the feeling of this diagnosis, and she didn't like to get it because she kind of felt limited by it. It was like someone put a stamp in your forehead and point at you and say, "This is who you are." And there was so many aspects of this borderline personality diagnosis that I couldn't recognize myself in. There were also other aspects where I could, the anxiety, for instance. It also turned out later on, after Hunger Heart was published in Denmark, that the diagnosis of borderline personality was wrong, actually, that it was ADHD instead. But they can sometimes be difficult to see, what do you say, separate from each other. So I would like to show that struggle, but also Karen in Hunger Heart, there's also a relief in getting a diagnosis, because then you can actually start getting therapy. You can start learning about some of your issues and triggers and so on.
Yeah, it's almost as if the diagnosis confines her, but then allows her to heal at the same time. And it's so interesting that it gets changed, later in real life. Yeah, it just goes to show sort of how those storytelling devices of diagnosis work, I think many of us agree that we need to start being a lot more comfortable with the idea of mental health struggle. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or advice on how we might reframe our approach when it comes to moments of mental crisis as it occurs to people in our lives.
Yeah, I think certainly there is a lot of stigma and taboo in relation in relation with mental diseases and mental breakdowns and so on. But there is also, I think, in many of us, a feeling of insecurity. How do we approach? And we can be scared that we don't know how to approach in a proper way, which might lead some of us to withdraw and not being there because we're so afraid of doing something wrong. And so I think it's very important. So many people suffer from a mental disorder throughout in this whole world, actually, maybe mostly in the Western world, but and it seems like we're getting more and more of us. So it's very important that we keep educating ourselves and each other to embrace each other when we suffer from these breakdowns, to like be there, look into each other's eyes, hold hands, talk, listen. And I also think it's important to read, to get more knowledge about mental diseases and in their many different aspects in order to be able to provide better proper help to the people you love when they need it.
Yeah, thank you. Hunger Heart came out in Denmark in 2018. Can you tell us a little about the reaction to the book that you got at that time?
Yeah, I think you're always a bit scared when you're a writer and you're going to publish a book, because all the newspapers will write about it. But I was more scared this time than I used to, because there was so much personal life at stake here. But I'm so grateful. All the reviews were so fine, excellent. So I was very happy with that. But I was kind of even more happy that I got so many invitations, and I still do, to travel around Denmark, to do talks about Hunger Heart, and to be part of conferences with doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and also I give a lecture at the medical school at the University of Copenhagen each semester, in order to you could say give the coming doctors some perspective about how does it actually feel to suffer from anxiety, etc. And what can we do to make our psychiatric systems, the hospitals, etc., better?
Wow, that's amazing. And it sounds like the book's been a real gateway to, it's opened so many conversations in so many different rooms. And that's really amazing to hear. And we're really excited for readers here to meet the book, and we hope the same happens. So on that note, how does it feel to have this novel out in translation for an English language audience?
Oh, this is huge. You know, I'm Danish. We are so few people in Denmark. So when you write a book in Danish, almost no one can read it. So getting this opportunity to get this novel translated into English, it's amazing. It's huge, and I'm so happy. I'm so thrilled. And I think the translation made by Marina Allemano turned out to be excellent. And she actually invited me into the process. So we had great work together with the translation.
Yeah,
And
would you actually mind
very
expanding
happy
on
with
that a
that.
little? Oh, sorry. I'm just curious almost if you expand on that a little, like how was it working with Marina, and what kind of collaboration happened?
Yeah, it was great because she was so patient and generous, actually. So she let me read the first draft. And I had a lot of comments, and she worked my comments in, and then we had the second draft. I think we made 5 or 6 drafts or something. So it was very interesting. It was mainly like the places in the novel where it's like the syntax is breaking down. We had to work with, and of course some of the metaphors. It's always difficult to translate the images and metaphors. I know that I'm a translator myself, so yeah.
Well, it's a really good translation. And yeah, my very last question is, what do you hope that English readers will take away?
I hope English readers will like feel that this is a good story. It's wow, it's a page turner, I could say. But I also hope that I could bring some perspectives, a little more knowledge on mental disorders, how it's like to suffer from a mental breakdown. I would be happy if that would be the case.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. We'll welcome Jay and Hazel back onto the Zoom to wrap us up.
Wow. Thank you both so much. That was
Yes, wonderful. What a lovely conversation. It's been so engaging and thoughtful. Karen, it's been really wonderful to hear you speak so intimately about Hungerheart. And Rachel, thanks for leading this fantastic conversation. What a great opportunity for people to engage with this important novel. Karen, do you have any sort of additional words that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I would like to say thank you so much to Book Hug Press and to Hazel and Jay Miller for publishing Hungerheart in English. I'm so happy. Thank you.
our pleasure.
It's been our pleasure for sure.
And Rachel, is there anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye today?
Just that everybody should read this great book. Read it. It's amazing.
You're here.
Yeah.
Well, from our end, we too would just really, it's so important for us to have the opportunity to thank you, Karen, for working with us again on this incredibly beautiful book, and really for trusting us with your work. It's just such a sincere pleasure to work with you. And we too would also just really like to thank and acknowledge the incredible work of Marina Allemano for her wonderful translation of this work, and which allows us, of course, to continue to bring your work to English language readers.
And to anybody watching, if you haven't yet purchased a copy of Hungerheart, you can do so on our website, bookhugpress.ca, or of course, you can order it from your favorite independent bookseller.
And so I guess that brings us to an end. Thank you once again, Karen. Thank you, Rachel, so much. This has been such a delight today. And to all of you watching, thank you for tuning in. And we wish everyone a terrific rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.